Welcome to part 77 of the Unsolved Mysteries Iceberg, where we explore true crime, urban legends, mysterious disappearances, myths and legends, internet mysteries, and more. Quick reminder to click like and subscribe, and also click the notification bell. Rd Amonson was a pioneering figure in polar exploration. His career was marked by a series of groundbreaking expeditions. In 1903, he and his crew successfully traversed the Northwest Passage, enduring extreme cold, ice-choked waters, and near-starvation conditions. This journey was pivotal in advancing polar exploration techniques. In 1911, Amondson's expedition to the South Pole cemented his legacy. Leading a thoroughly planned and expertly executed mission, Amondson's team reached the pole on December 14, 1911, ahead of Robert Falcon Scott's British expedition. Their success was attributed to Amondson's use of skis and sled dogs, survival skills learned from the Inuit during his exploration on the other end of the globe, and his strategic approach. In May 1928, the Italian explorer Umberto Nobile's airship, Italia, crashed in the Arctic. Amundsen, determined to aid his fellow explorer, joined the multinational rescue effort. On June 18, 1928, he boarded a French Latham 47 seaplane from Tromsø, Norway, with a crew of 5. The mission was fraught with challenges from the start. Poor weather conditions and visibility issues plagued the search efforts. Tragically, Amundsen's seaplane vanished, and despite extensive search operations, it was never found. The last known radio contact from the plane placed it near Bear Island in the Svalbard archipelago. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence emerged in 1933, when Norwegian fishermen discovered a pontoon, potentially from Amundsen's seaplane near Tromsø. Unfortunately, the pontoon was lost to the sea before it could be examined further and confirmed to be that of Amundsen's plane. In 2009, a high-tech search operation led by the Norwegian Air Force and the Norwegian Maritime Museum aimed to locate Amundsen's plane. Despite employing advanced sonar technology, the search yielded no conclusive results, leaving the mystery unsolved. One theory suggests that Amundsen's plane might have crashed due to a combination of mechanical failure and severe Arctic weather. The extreme conditions in the Arctic Ocean, including ice flows and freezing temperatures, would have made survival and any subsequent search efforts extraordinarily difficult. Roald Amondson's name is perhaps most familiar in the 21st century due to the fact that Roald Dahl, one of the most prolific and beloved children's authors, was named in his honor. The Fausto ship disappearance. The mysterious disappearance of El Fausto is one of the most baffling maritime mysteries in recent history, particularly because of its repeated disappearances and eerie circumstances. The story revolves around a small fishing boat from the Canary Islands that vanished under inexplicable conditions, only to reappear several times before finally being lost forever. On July 20th, 1968, the fishing boat set sail from Tazacorte, La Palma, in the Canary Islands, with a planned short trip to El Hierro, another island about 80 kilometers away. The crew consisted of 4 seasoned sailors and a mechanic and young father named Julio Garcia Pino. The journey was expected to be routine, but the boat never arrived at its destination. For days, there was no word from El Fausto. Then, on July 25th, 5 days after its disappearance, the British ship Duchess reported sighting the vessel about 100 kilometers from La Palma. The crew of El Fausto appeared to be in good health, and they declined an offer to be towed back to shore, requesting only provisions and fuel to continue their journey independently. Despite assurances, El Fausto did not return, and concerns mounted. A significant search operation was launched, involving multiple aircraft and ships, but it yielded no results. On August 7, 1968, the boat was officially declared missing. However, the mystery deepened when on October 9, 1968, the Italian freighter Anna Di Maio stumbled upon the El Fausto adrift near the Tropic of Cancer, far from its original route. On board was the nearly mummified body of Julio Garcia Pino, clutching a radio. The other crew members were nowhere to be found. The Anna Di Maio crew initially attempted to tow El Fausto to Venezuela, but reported that the line mysteriously broke and the ship drifted away. After this occurrence, the El Fausto was never seen again. Adding to the mystery, a notebook belonging to Julio Garcia Pino was found with almost all its pages torn out, save for a haunting final note addressed to his wife. It instructed her on the management of his belongings and urging her never to tell their son what had happened on board the ship. The case of El Fausto has spawned numerous theories over the years. Some suggest that the crew attempted an illegal migration to Venezuela, driven by economic hardships in Spain, though this theory is generally dismissed given they all had families. Others speculate about navigational errors or unforeseen mechanical failures, though the calm sea conditions and the experience of the crew make these explanations seem insufficient. Another theory revolves around a potential supernatural intervention or psychological breakdown, especially considering the eerie circumstances under which the boat reappeared over time. The partially mummified state of Julio Garcia Pino and the unexplained disappearance of the other crew members fuel speculation that something far more sinister or inexplicable occurred. Another theory proposes that the crew witnessed some sort of Cold War-related weapons test that they weren't supposed to witness, and as such they were disposed of. Another variant of this theory is that they were used as live test subjects for a Cold War weapon, providing some potential explanation for the state of Julio Garcia Pino's body. Notably, there is significant controversy over whether the Fausto disappearance is properly classified as a ship disappearance or as an urban legend. However, there are contemporaneous Spanish-language newspaper reports about the initial disappearance and subsequent disappearances, strongly indicating the basic story is true. This is one of the most requested unsolved mysteries on the Discord, with Discord members Hachiseko, Boomslang, and Dell all independently suggesting the case. Remember to join the Discord or leave your case recommendations in the comments section below. The War of the Worlds broadcast panic. On October 30th, 1938, Orson Welles and his Mercury Theater on the Air aired a dramatization of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds. This broadcast led to what is now known as the War of the Worlds broadcast panic. The broadcast began innocuously with dance music, but soon transitioned to realistic news bulletins describing explosions on Mars and the landing of Martian spacecraft in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. The program featured dozens of actors playing news reporters, astronomers, and even government officials, detailing a terrifying invasion by Martians using heat rays and poison gas. Despite multiple announcements that the broadcast was fictional, many listeners who tuned in late missed these disclaimers and believed the events were real. This resulted in widespread panic. People flooded police stations and newspapers with calls, seeking information and safety instructions. In New Jersey, the Trenton Police Department reportedly received over 2,000 calls in just a couple of hours. Some listeners even begged the electric company to cut power to prevent the Martians from finding them. The context of the time played a significant role in the reaction. The 1930s were fraught with anxiety due to the Great Depression, the looming threat of war in Europe, and recent national disasters like the Hindenburg explosion. This backdrop of fear made the public more susceptible to believing the broadcast was real. The media frenzy following the broadcast contributed significantly to the perception of mass hysteria. Newspapers, seeing an opportunity to undermine the rising popularity of radio, exaggerated the extent of the panic. They reported dramatic stories of people fleeing their homes, traffic jams, and frantic calls to authorities, weaving these individual incidents into a narrative of nationwide chaos. However, most historians agree that the panic was not as widespread as initially reported, and that the response was amplified by the media. Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater team did not anticipate the scale of the reaction. Welles later expressed both surprise and remorse over the unintended consequences of the broadcast. Despite initial fears that the event would ruin his career, the controversy ultimately benefited Welles, propelling him to fame and leading to a contract with a Hollywood studio. This eventually resulted in the creation of Citizen Kane, considered by many to be one of the most innovative films of all time. The Federal Communications Commission investigated the incident but found no laws had been broken. Nevertheless, the event led to changes in how broadcasts were handled, with networks becoming more cautious about the content they aired. On March 19, 1997, the body of Yasuko Watanabe, a 39-year-old senior economic researcher at the Tokyo Electric Power Company, was discovered in a Tokyo apartment. The circumstances of her death, coupled with her secret life as a paid companionship worker, shocked Japan and led to a complex and controversial investigation that spanned years and involved a wrongful imprisonment. Watanabe, a well-educated woman from an affluent family, had been leading a double life. By day, she was a respected professional with a promising career, and by night, she worked the streets of Tokyo. This duality in her life added a layer of sensationalism to the case, which the media eagerly amplified. The discovery of her body, strangled and showing signs of indecent assault, sparked a major investigation by the Tokyo Metropolitan Police. The initial investigation quickly focused on Govinda Prasad Mainali, a Nepalese migrant worker who lived nearby. Mainali had been working in Japan and was apprehended not for the slaying initially, but for overstaying his visa. The police, however, linked him to Watanabe's slaying based on circumstantial evidence, including testimonies that he had been seen with Watanabe prior to her death. Mainali was arrested and later convicted in 2000 after a highly controversial trial that lacked concrete evidence tying him to the crime. During his trial, the prosecution relied heavily on weak circumstantial evidence, such as the testimonies of witnesses who claimed to have seen Mainali with Watanabe. The evidence presented was often contradictory and insufficient to conclusively prove his guilt. Nevertheless, Mainali was sentenced to life imprisonment. His conviction was widely criticized both in Japan and around the world, especially given the lack of direct evidence linking him to the grisly crime. For years, Mainali maintained his innocence, and his defense team continued to appeal the conviction. It wasn't until 2012, when advanced DNA testing became available, that a significant breakthrough occurred. DNA evidence from samples found on Watanabe's body was tested and conclusively showed that it did not belong to Mainali, but rather to another, unidentified individual. This new evidence led to Mainali's exoneration, and he was released after spending well over a decade in prison for a crime he did not commit. The case exposed significant flaws in the Japanese legal system, particularly regarding the treatment of certain foreign nationals and the reliance on circumstantial evidence in criminal prosecutions. One particularly egregious flaw in the system is that in Japan, unlike in the United States, the prosecution is not required to turn over all evidence to the defense. In the United States, if prosecutors have evidence that would exonerate or potentially exonerate the accused, the defense is provided access to this evidence to form the basis for their defense. Without this rule, the Japanese prosecution in this case was able to cherry-pick evidence that appeared to show that Mainali was the guilty party. Following his release, Mainali was deported to Nepal and in 2013 he was awarded the equivalent of $800,000 American in compensation for his wrongful imprisonment. Despite the compensation, the real perpetrator of Yasuko Watanabe's slaying has never been identified, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Unfortunately, due to the passage of time, there doesn't appear to have been any significant breakthroughs in the investigation since 2012. However, since the police have a DNA profile, there's always the chance that the killer is one day brought to justice. Hey everyone, it's Jimmy taking a few seconds to promote my work. Remember to like and subscribe, and also share this video with your friends and family. Sharing the video with your friends and family is one of the biggest ways you can help my channel grow. Also check out my music on Spotify, YouTube Music, and Apple Music. If you love chill electronica and lo-fi beats, I think you would really love my music. Cindy James, a nurse in Vancouver, British Columbia, endured a series of harrowing events that culminated in her horrific end on June 8, 1989. Cindy James was born and raised in Vancouver. After marrying psychiatrist Roy Makepeace in 1966, she worked with preschool children with special needs, and later at Richmond General Hospital. In 1982, 4 months after separating from Makepeace, Cindy began receiving disturbing phone calls and threats from an unknown assailant. I note that despite initial suspicion, Makepeace was very rapidly cleared as a suspect in all the incidents involving Cindy. But I digress. These calls were just the beginning of a 7-year nightmare. The harassment escalated from phone calls to physical attacks. Cindy reported nearly 100 incidents to the police, including finding dead animals in her yard and receiving threatening letters. She moved houses, bought new cars, and got new license plates, and even altered her last name, but the attacks persisted. One of the more chilling incidents occurred on January 27, 1983, when a friend found Cindy unconscious in her yard with a nylon stocking around her neck. Cindy hired a private investigator, Ozzy Caban, who provided her with a two-way radio. On January 30, 1984, Caban found Cindy unconscious in her home with another stocking tied around her neck and a note stabbed through her hand. This incident raised suspicions among police, as there were no signs of forced entry, and the needle marks found on Cindy's arm showed no traces of drugs. Despite intense investigations, including phone taps and surveillance, police found no conclusive evidence pointing to an external attacker. Some began to suspect that Cindy might have been staging the incidents herself. This theory gained traction when she failed multiple polygraph tests and was diagnosed with possible psychotic breaks by psychiatrists during a 10-week stay at a mental health facility. In May 1989, Cindy vanished. She was last seen depositing her paycheck and shopping for groceries and gifts. Her car was found with a note inside, but no significant clues to her whereabouts. On June 8th, her body was discovered near an abandoned house. She was hogtied with a nylon stocking around her neck, and evidence of drug overdose from morphine and flurazepam. The discovery of Cindy's body raised more questions than answers. Her hands and feet were bound, which some believed she couldn't have done herself, leading to theories about external involvement. However, others pointed to her psychiatric history and the failed polygraphs as indications of self-harm. The case of Cindy James remains unsolved. Some believe she was the victim of a relentless stalker, while others think she may have orchestrated the events due to mental illness. Looking into the evidence, I find it difficult to believe that the physical restraints would have been possible for Cindy to self-apply. The intricacy of the knots and the gagging suggest an external force was involved. Additionally, the level of morphine found in her body seems to strongly suggest she would have been incapacitated before she could complete such complex tasks. Cindy's reports of harassment were corroborated by some friends and family members who witnessed some of the unusual incidents firsthand. This brings me to the mental illness portion, which is often cited as, quote, proof that Cindy did end herself. Her deteriorating mental state was arguably a very natural result of prolonged terror rather than self-inflicted psychological issues. It appears the police determined that she was mentally unstable and stopped taking her stalking complaints seriously rather than assuming that the stalker was trying to drive her to madness. The disappearance of Tony Jones. On November 3, 1982, Tony Jones, a 20-year-old backpacker from Perth, Australia, made his last known phone call to his family from a phone booth in Townsville, North Queensland. He told them he was heading towards Mount Isa to meet his brother Tim and would be home for Christmas. Tony was never heard from again. Tony was the youngest of 7 children, known for his adventurous spirit and close family ties. He kept in regular contact with his family during his travels, which made his sudden disappearance all the more alarming. On the night of his last call, Tony planned to hitchhike along the Flinders Highway, also known ominously as the Highway of Death, due to numerous disappearances in the area. Initially, the police response was sluggish, partly due to the practices of the time, as missing persons cases involving adults often didn't receive the urgent attention they do today. This lack of immediate action hampered the early stages of the investigation. Despite extensive searches and numerous leads over the years, including a fruitless search prompted by a tip-off letter in 1983, Tony's fate remains unknown. Several theories have emerged over the decades regarding Tony's disappearance. One involves a former police officer whose name surfaced as a suspect during the initial inquest. This officer was later identified as a person of interest, but was cleared of all wrongdoing. Another theory suggests that Tony fell victim to foul play by locals in the area, with various witness reports and anecdotal evidence pointing to possible suspects. The Jones family has been relentless in their pursuit of answers. Their efforts led to the establishment of National Missing Persons Week in Australia, a significant step in raising awareness and support for families of the missing. Despite the passing of Tony's mother in 1990, the family continues to push for a thorough investigation. They have faced numerous setbacks, including lost evidence and delayed inquests. In 2002, a coroner's inquest officially concluded that Tony had met with foul play, though it could not determine the exact circumstances or identify those responsible. The case has seen periodic revivals in interest, often driven by new information or renewed public and media attention. The Queensland Police have made several appeals over the years for anyone with information to come forward, offering significant rewards for credible leads. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Tony Jones, please reach out to the Queensland Police Service. The London Beer Flood. On October 17, 1814, at the Horseshoe Brewery on Tottenham Court Road, a massive vat containing over 300,000 gallons of beer ruptured. This catastrophic failure unleashed a torrent of beer into the streets of St. Giles, a densely populated London slum. The incident quickly became known as the London Beer Flood. The incident began when an iron ring around a 22-foot-high wooden fermentation tank snapped, causing the tank to burst. The explosion was so forceful that it destroyed the brewery's back wall, and the flood of beer quickly swept through the surrounding streets. The wave, reaching 15 feet high, demolished houses and caused significant destruction in the St. Giles neighborhood. Among the victims were Mary Banfield and her daughter Hannah, who were having tea when the flood hit. Additionally, a wake being held for a 2-year-old boy in a nearby house resulted in the deaths of 4 mourners when the cellar they were in was flooded. In total, 8 people lost their lives in the disaster, including a teenage barmaid named Eleanor Cooper, who was trapped under the rubble of the Tavistock Arms pub. While it is known that an iron ring on a large fermentation vat snapped, leading to the flood, the exact reasons for the failure remain unclear. Theories suggest it might have been due to poor maintenance, the immense pressure of the fermenting beer, or structural weaknesses in the vat's construction. However, no definitive cause was ever officially established, leaving room for speculation. One rumor suggested that hundreds of people collected the beer, resulting in mass drunkenness and a supposed death from alcohol poisoning, although contemporary reports did not support this. The disaster was investigated, and the jury concluded that it was a, quote, act of God, absolving the brewery of responsibility. This verdict has been questioned over the years, with some suggesting that negligence or cost-cutting measures might have contributed to the accident. Additionally, many have speculated that these cost-cutting measures or negligence would not have been a factor had the brewery been located in a less impoverished area of the city. The lack of stringent industrial regulations at the time means that the true accountability for the disaster remains a subject of debate. In the wake of the flood, the brewery was rebuilt. The mystery of Rennes-le-Chateau. Rennes-le-Chateau is a very small village in southern France, with what is potentially a very big secret. The village itself is picturesque, with narrow streets, stone houses, and a church dedicated to Mary Magdalene. However, it's not only the beauty of Rennes-le-Chateau that draws tens of thousands of visitors each year, but rather the mystery surrounding a 19th century priest named Béranger Saunière. In 1885, Saunière was appointed as the parish priest of the dilapidated church of Saint Mary Magdalene in Rennes-le-Chateau. Initially, Saunière was living modestly on a meager salary. However, in the years that followed, he began to spend large sums of money on renovations for the church and the surrounding area. This included funding the construction of a large villa. This unexpected wealth sparked rumors and conspiracy theories that continue to this day. One of the most famous theories involves Saunière discovering a hidden treasure. According to some accounts, while renovating the church, Saunière found ancient parchments that contained cryptic messages or possibly led to a treasure. Some believe this treasure could be linked to the Visigoths or to the Knights Templar, a medieval military order that amassed great wealth prior to losing favor. Adding to the mystery, Saunière's financial records revealed that he had received an astronomical number of requests to say Mass, far more than he could have realistically fulfilled in his life. This led to suspicions that he was involved in simony, the act of selling church favors or sacred things, under the table. The story took a dramatic turn in the mid-20th century when Noel Corbu, a local businessman who bought Saunière's estate, began to publicize the priest's story. Corbu claimed that Saunière had found a treasure hidden by Blanche of Castile, a medieval Spanish princess who became Queen of France in the 13th century. Corbu's tales caught the attention of Pierre Plantard, who linked them to the myth of the Priory of Sion, a secret society purportedly protecting the bloodline of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. This connection was further popularized by the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and later by Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code. Despite numerous investigations and excavations, no concrete evidence of a treasure has ever been found. Many believe that Saunière might have discovered valuable historical artifacts, or even documents that he sold to wealthy collectors or the church. But these claims remain unverified. Some historians suggest that Saunière's wealth might have come from blackmailing the church with some potentially damaging secrets, though this theory is also speculative. The allure of Rennes-le-Chateau is not just in its potential hidden wealth, but also in its historical and mystical connections. Notably, the village is often associated with sacred geometry, ley lines, and other esoteric traditions. These theories, combined with the mysterious life of Saunière, have cemented Rennes le Chateau's place in popular culture and continue to attract researchers, treasure hunters, and tourists. The poisoning of Alexander Litvinenko. On November 1, 2006, Alexander Litvinenko, a former officer of the Russian FSB and KGB, was poisoned in London. Litvinenko defected to the UK in 2000 after accusing the FSB of engaging in illegal activities, including slayings of political opponents. His outspokenness and defection were viewed as acts of betrayal by his former colleagues in Moscow. In London, Litvinenko continued his work as a critic of the Russian government and as an informant for British intelligence. On the day he was poisoned, Litvinenko met with Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun, both quote-unquote former Russian agents, at the Millennium Hotel in London. During this meeting, Litvinenko ingested polonium-210, a highly radioactive substance, believed to have been mixed into his tea. Polonium-210 is a rare and lethal isotope, primarily produced in state-controlled nuclear reactors in Russia, making its acquisition by private individuals highly improbable. After falling ill, Litvinenko was hospitalized and died 3 weeks later. British investigators quickly identified polonium-210 as the cause of his symptoms, a discovery that pointed to a sophisticated and state-sponsored operation due to the isotope's rarity. The investigation by Scotland Yard concluded that Lugovoy and Kovtun were responsible for the poisoning, acting under orders likely approved at the highest levels of the Russian government. British authorities requested the extradition of the suspects, but Russia refused, citing constitutional restrictions against extraditing its citizens. The public inquiry led by Judge Robert Owen in 2016 reinforced these conclusions, asserting that the operation was probably approved by President Putin. This assertion was based on the sophistication of the assassination and the direct links to Russian state facilities. The European Court of Human Rights also held Russia accountable, awarding damages to Litvinenko's widow, Marina. The court emphasized the improbability of such an operation being carried out without state involvement, given the complexities surrounding the acquisition and handling of polonium-210. Investigators found over 40 contaminated sites, including restaurants, hotels, aircraft, and even public transport systems such as the London Underground. The extensive contamination and the presence of polonium-210 at so many locations underscored the sophisticated and hazardous nature of the operation. It posed significant health risks to the public, though most of the detected radiation levels outside of Litvinenko's immediate environment were low enough not to cause harm. The full extent of the contamination and the potential risks to those who came into contact with affected areas are still subjects of ongoing investigation. While it is established that polonium-210 was used, the precise logistics of how it was procured and transported remain unclear. Polonium-210 is not easily accessible and is typically produced in state-controlled nuclear reactors. This suggests significant state involvement, but the exact chain of custody from production to administration is murky. Despite overwhelming evidence, Moscow has consistently denied any involvement, dismissing the British inquiry as biased and unprofessional. The Kremlin's steadfast denial and refusal to cooperate with international investigations have only fueled further speculation about the mechanisms behind the poisoning. Alexander Litvinenko's poisoning remains one of the most notorious cases of state-sponsored violence in recent history. The phrase, "May you live in interesting times," is a supposed ancient Chinese curse, yet its origins are far from clear. The expression is often cited as a translation of a traditional Chinese curse, but no such phrase has been found in Chinese texts. The closest similar saying in Chinese translates to, Better to be a dog in times of tranquility than a human in times of chaos. This proverb conveys the sentiment that chaotic times are best avoided. The earliest known use of the phrase in English can be traced back to a British diplomat's memoir from 1936, which mentions being warned of the curse before departing for China. This anecdote is often linked to Sir Austen Chamberlain, who attributed the curse to a member of the British diplomatic service in China. Chamberlain's father, Joseph Chamberlain, also used a similar phrase in an 1898 speech, possibly influencing its popularization. Despite its dubious origins, the phrase has been embraced by many notable figures. For instance, Robert F. Kennedy used it in a 1966 speech, highlighting the dual nature of interesting times as both dangerous and full of potential for creativity and innovation. The phrase has also appeared in various literary and cultural contexts, further embedding it into popular consciousness. The phrase's allure lies in its ironic twist. At first glance, interesting times might seem desirable, but historically such periods are marked by turmoil and hardship. This paradox makes the phrase an effective way to comment on the unpredictability and complexity of historical events. In modern times, the phrase has been referenced in numerous contexts, from political speeches to cultural critiques. Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse. One of the most frequently cited examples of the Mandela effect is the widespread belief that Ed McMahon, the famous sidekick on The Tonight Show, was a spokesperson for Publishers Clearinghouse. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where a large group of people remember something differently from how it actually happened. Believers in this Mandela effect report that he personally delivered oversized checks to sweepstakes winners. However, despite these vivid memories, the truth is that Ed McMahon never worked for Publishers Clearinghouse. The roots of this false memory may stem from McMahon's actual role as a spokesperson for a different company, American Family Publishers, which operated in a similar space as PCH. In the 1980s and 1990s, AFP and PCH were direct competitors, both heavily promoting their sweepstakes with high-value prizes, often confusing consumers. McMahon's involvement with AFP included his image being featured prominently on promotional materials and commercials, where he would encourage people to enter the sweepstakes. However, unlike the PCH Prize Patrol, McMahon did not go to winners' homes with a camera crew to deliver checks. This role was central to the PCH brand, but was never part of McMahon's job description at AFP. Over time, as AFP faded from public memory, many people began to conflate the two companies, mistakenly believing that McMahon was the face of PCH. Other factors may also have contributed to this widespread misconception. For example, McMahon appeared on the sitcom Roseanne, where his character did indeed deliver checks, further solidifying the association in viewers' minds. In response to the persistent rumors, Publishers Clearinghouse has repeatedly clarified that Ed McMahon was never associated with their company. They emphasize that the real PCH Prize Patrol members, who actually do deliver checks to winners' homes, have never included McMahon. Narumi Kurasaki, a Japanese student studying in France, disappeared in December 2016 under circumstances that have captivated attention across Europe, Japan, and South America. Narumi Kurasaki was a 21-year-old Japanese student from Tokyo, studying French at the University of Franche-Comté in Besançon, France. She was known for her bright personality and had aspirations of mastering the French language to pursue a career in international relations. Her life in France seemed promising until she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that would span across continents. Narumi was last seen on the evening of December 4, 2016, after having dinner with her ex-boyfriend, Nicolas Zepeda, a Chilean national she had met while studying in Japan. The two had a complex relationship, and although they had broken up, Zepeda had traveled to France, reportedly to see her one last time. This dinner would be the last time Narumi was seen alive. The investigation into her disappearance began when Narumi failed to attend classes and respond to messages. Her friends reported her missing, prompting the French authorities to search her dorm room. Inside, they found her personal belongings, including her coat and wallet, but curiously, some items like her passport and a suitcase were missing. Despite the room appearing tidy, which was unusual for Narumi, there were unsettling signs, such as her coat being left behind, something highly unlikely during the cold December weather. Nicholas Zepeda quickly became the prime suspect due to his suspicious behavior and history with Narumi. Zepeda had a history of possessiveness and jealousy, which was evident in his digital communications with Narumi. Before her disappearance, he had posted a disturbing video online, alluding to imposing conditions on Narumi during her stay in France. This video, coupled with text messages where he expressed his frustration over her social interactions, painted a picture of a troubled and controlling ex-partner. Further investigation revealed that on the night of Narumi's disappearance, loud noises, possibly screams, were heard from her dormitory, followed by a deafening silence. Witnesses reported seeing Zepeda leaving the building alone, and later, digital traces linked him to Narumi's disappearance. Despite these findings, Zepeda denied any involvement, claiming that Narumi was alive when he last saw her. The case took on an international dimension when Zepeda returned to Chile shortly after Narumi went missing. With no body found and limited physical evidence, the French authorities faced significant challenges in building a case against him. However, persistent diplomatic efforts led to Zepeda's extradition to France in 2020, where he was charged. The trial, which was dubbed the Great Trial by the French media, began in March 2022 and was marked by its international scope. It involved witnesses from multiple countries, including Japan and Chile. The trial became a media spectacle reflecting the global interest in the case. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Zepeda's jealousy and obsession with Narumi drove him to commit the slaying. They presented evidence of his controlling behavior, the suspicious circumstances of Narumi's disappearance, and his subsequent actions, including leaving France immediately after the incident. The defense, however, maintained that there was no concrete proof that Narumi was dead, let alone that Zepeda was responsible for her disappearance. Despite the defense's arguments, the jury found Zepeda guilty of murder. In April 2022, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison. The verdict brought some closure to Narumi's family, but many questions remained unanswered, particularly regarding the whereabouts of her body. In March 2023, Zepeda appealed the conviction, insisting on his innocence and arguing that the evidence against him was circumstantial. However, the verdict was upheld on appeal, despite the fact that Narumi's body has never been recovered. The Koso artifact, discovered in 1961 near Olancha, California, is one of the controversial objects associated with out-of-place artifacts. This object was found by Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Mikesell while prospecting for geodes. When they cut into one of the geodes, they discovered a cylindrical object that resembled a spark plug encased in a hard material, initially believed to be a 500,000-year-old geode. The artifact quickly gained attention due to the claim that it was found inside a geode, suggesting an impossibly ancient origin for what appeared to be a modern spark plug. Early reports even mentioned an unnamed geologist who allegedly dated the artifact to 500,000 years ago. However, this claim has never been substantiated with concrete evidence or peer-reviewed publication. Further examination revealed that the material encasing the artifact was not a geode, but a concretion. This is a type of natural accumulation of materials that can occur relatively quickly under the right conditions. X-ray analysis of the object showed that it closely resembled a 1920s-era Champion spark plug, specifically used in Ford Model T or Model A engines. The Koso artifact has inspired various theories, ranging from ancient advanced civilizations and prehistoric extraterrestrials to time travelers leaving modern artifacts in the past. However, these theories largely stem from the initial misinterpretation of the concretion as a geode and the mysterious, unverified dating. Investigations by experts from the Spark Plug Collectors of America confirmed that the object was indeed a spark plug from the 1920s. Despite the scientific consensus, the Koso artifact continues to be a topic of speculation. Some proponents of its ancient origins point to the geologist's report and claim that the true nature of the object may have been covered up. However, the scientific community largely views the artifact as a modern object that became encased in natural sediment over decades rather than millennia. The Koso artifact is now displayed at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle, where it serves as an example of how natural processes can create misleading contexts for modern objects. Also, if you're interested in out-of-place artifacts, be sure to check out my alternative channel, Lazy Chill History, for more historical mysteries and history content generally. I've included a link to this channel in the description of this episode. The Puka is a shape-shifting creature deeply rooted in Irish and general Celtic folklore. This figure has been portrayed in various forms across millennia, embodying both benevolence and mischief in different forms. The name Puka comes from the Old Irish word for goblin, or spirit. These beings are often associated with the supernatural world, particularly the liminal spaces between the human and fairy realms. The Puka is not confined to one specific form. It is a master of disguise, able to transform into various animals such as horses, goats, rabbits, dogs, and even occasionally humans. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Puka is its dual nature. Depending on the tale, the Puka can either be a source of good fortune or a malevolent trickster. In its mischievous role, the Puka is notorious for leading travelers astray or taking them on wild nocturnal rides, especially in its horse form. These rides are often terrifying, with the rider returned unharmed physically, but deeply shaken by the experience. On the other hand, there are stories where the Puka takes on a more protective and helpful role. For example, in one tale, the Puka helps a poor farmer by milling his grain at night, ensuring the family's prosperity. In return, the farmer's son shows kindness to the creature, which in turn bestows further blessings on the family. Notably, the Puka also worked its way into English culture, where they are called Puck or Goodfellows. Through this English lens, the Puka has entered popular culture as one of Shakespeare's most famous and memorable characters, from A Midsummer Night's Dream. For anyone who even has a passing interest in Shakespeare, you almost certainly already guessed that this is the trickster fairy Robin Goodfellow, also known as Puck. Big shout out to Discord community member Orklord Dave for this great suggestion. If you like this video, please do me a huge favor and click the share button and send it to anyone who you think may enjoy it. Remember to like and subscribe and check out the Patreon or YouTube membership to support the channel further. Also, get my Lazy Chill lo-fi beats on Spotify, YouTube Music, or Apple Music. Thanks to you guys, my Spotify has gone from virtually no monthly listeners to over 9,000 monthly listeners in short order. Shout out to my patrons Iced Mocha, Kurt the Squirt, Monoxide Wendigo, Jeffer Metcalf, Z-Volts, Zach Steele, Franz Tech, Unknown Delusions, Faye, Jack Russell, Boomslang, Spookiest Becky, Vespertine, Metanova, Will Roan, Crab Nebula, and Blasphemous.